Okay, so we're going to, Tanae, sit still please. We're going to show, I'm just doing yarn braid extensions into Tanae's hair here, like this. So I've sectioned off a row. I'm doing fairly small braids, so I'm using my silicone pintail comb. I love it for parting. I'm just going to section off a little section here. Clip the hair that I'm not using out of the way. I'm using fairly small sections. I'm going to put some holding product on. I'm using the Curlicue Princess Glaze. It works very well on Tanae's hair for keeping the frizzies down. I just comb through it, make sure that there's no little tangles in it. Tanae, please sit still. Once I've got my section ready, I get my yarn. Okay, so I've got plain black acrylic yarn that I bought at Walmart for $5. Much cheaper than the hair extension hair, and I'm finding much easier to work with than synthetic hair, because there's obviously less fibers, less strands to deal with. So I've experimented with a couple of different ways of attaching the yarn to the hair, and I'll show you the two methods that I've tried. The second method is the one that I'm preferring. I'm finding it a lot easier. So the first method, right now, I'm taking both individual strands, finding the center of them, and then sort of crisscrossing them so that they are looped together like that. And then I am making a T out of the yarn. So I have a double strand of yarn, a single strand in the middle, and a single strand on the other side. So I've taken those two strands that I've looped together into a sort of a T, so there's a single strand down the middle. And I'm going to lay this underneath this section of hair that I'm using so that the hair runs along the single strand down the middle. Okay, Tanae, sit still. So I just sort of lay it underneath and put my thumb on the top, holding the hair to the single strand that's running along the middle. And then I just start braiding. And I have to sort of keep holding the top. And I keep braiding it just like I would a normal braid. I treat the double strand of yarn just like one piece of hair. And then you just braid. And you braid your way right to the end. Okay. So the other method that I use just involves keeping the two strands of hair together and looping them at the center. And I'm just going to loop that over the hair so that the hair is in the middle and the two strands are on the outside. And then crisscross the hair on the bottom. And then you sort of grab it at the base. So now I've got two strands of hair, or two strands of yarn, sorry, the hair in the middle and two strands of yarn. Now I'm going to braid like this, keeping the hair separate. There's going to be no yarn with the hair right now. The hair is going to be braided on its own at this point, and I'll incorporate some yarn into that section in a minute. You just braid as normal. And after you've done a few stitches, I'm going to add the yarn to the braid. So I've got the hair in the middle, and I've got a double strand of yarn here. I'm just going to take one of the strands from the double yarn and add it to the hair section. So I've got a single strand of yarn with hair, and then over here I've got the double strand of yarn. And I'm just going to continue braiding like I was, keeping the yarn and the hair now, that one single strand of yarn together with the hair. I'm just going to braid it out. As I get to the end where the hair is starting to where I'm starting to get to the end of the hair, I'm just a little bit more careful to make sure that I am pulling the hair so that it's being held along the yarn, so that it stays incorporated in the braid as opposed to sticking out all over the place. And the more I can hold it against the yarn, the less little ends stick out. Tanae seems to have a lot of little frizzy ends, so this seems to work the best. And once I'm done with the hair, I'll end up with just yarn, and I just continue on braiding with the yarn. And I read something about braiding, and braiding is not about pulling, it's about placing. So you notice I'm not pulling on the hair that's already braided. I'm just placing the hair where it goes and then moving on. so you don't really have to pull a whole lot, but I'm a pretty slow braider. I know some people braid a lot faster than this. I'm going to braid this out to the end, and occasionally I'll just kind of measure to see where I'm at. Okay, so once I get to the end of where I want to braid, I've got just the ends of the yarn that aren't braided. I'm finishing off with some bow beads, or puffy bones, as Tanae calls them. So I've already got them loaded on my beater, and I'm only using 4 beads at the end of each braid, but I've loaded my beater right up. So basically place the yarn through the beater, and I find this works if I'm on yarn that is not braided. Once I get up into the yarn that's braided and trying to loop that through the beater, I find it harder to push the beads on. So then I just push the beads over top of the yarn. Some of them take a little wiggle depending on how much yarn you've got there. And now I'm just going to knot it to end it so that the beads stay on and the braid stays tight. Make sure I pull the knot right to the end of where I braided. Pull it tight. Arrange my beads. And then the little extra, some people like to leave that. I like to cut it. So I just cut it off so I have a nice clean end on my braid. And there is her extensions. Okay.
Are we done?
No. Now you can braid it all the way out to the end. Now, one little trick is if this happens, and this happens to me frequently, I'm not sure why, as I'm getting near the end, I have one single yarn that's quite a bit shorter than the rest. So all I do is I cheat. I just add one of the longer strands of yarn to it so that I can sort of incorporate the end of the short yarn, just like I did with the hair. And then the long, so now all the 3 strands are pretty well equal. Turn around. Swing your hair. And turn around. Look at the camera. Wave. Say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.